I don't know. You're right.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors to order. We will begin, as always, with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if the clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Johnson.
Here.
Supervisor Pat Breslin.
Here.
Supervisor Headland.
Here.
Supervisor Score.
Here.
Supervisor Steen.
Here.
Supervisor Zons.
Present.
Supervisor Gary Bjork. Supervisor Wilsey. Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Witzel. Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Barrier. Supervisor Calabrese.
I don't know.
Okay. Supervisor Keeter.
Online.
Online. Supervisor Vogel. Supervisor Sean Breslin is excused. Supervisor Vandermeulen. Supervisor Robinson.
Here.
Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Hagan. Supervisor Thomas. Supervisor Prochnow.
Here.
Supervisor Gilbert.
Here.
Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Here.
Supervisor Bauer.
Here.
Supervisor Lenow.
What now?
And Supervisor Hartung. And Chair McCullough.
Here. On to the approval of the minutes. I'm going to treat them jointly for the July 26th and August 30th minutes. I need a motion. Supervisor Morehouse moves, Supervisor Larry Bjork seconds. Any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, on to presentations of petitions, memorials, and other communications. This one will be a little more difficult than usual. All right. So let me start by saying that I'm going to miss Supervisor Rogers. As a chair, I will miss his leadership, his hard questions, his support when I had it, and his opposition when he felt it necessary. Personally, I will miss Mike's charm, his careful thinking, his wit, and the frequent glint of humor in his eyes. Most of all, I will miss his dedication and commitment to the people of Dunn County. The word politician comes from the Greek polis, or of the people. Mike exemplified that. He never forgot for so much as an instant that our job here is to serve and represent the people. And over his many years of service, he always lived up to that high standard. He was a good politician, a good colleague, and a good man. I will miss him. We all will. So Mike's wife, Teresa, is here to accept the certificate commemorating Mike's years of service, along with some of his other family. On behalf of Dunn County, please allow me to thank you for sharing his time with all of us. We really appreciate it. Yeah, right there. Are there any other memorials petitions? Okay, deep breath. All right. On to public comment. Do we have any members of the public here who wish to address the board? Apparently, Clerk Mercil has a few from online. So, yes.
This was received this was written on July 18th, 2023. Dear Supervisors, being 80 years of age and computer illiterate, I still prefer doing things the old-fashioned way, like delivering the fare entries in person. Mail delivery is not always dependable, especially where deadlines are concerned. Showing cattle and poultry at the Dunn County fairs, district and state fairs were some of the most memorable experiences of my youth. In recent years, I have very much enjoyed exhibiting various articles locally in the open and senior classes. Exhibitors in these areas are often of the older generations. Since there is no specific fair office at the county government center, nor many staff present for direction, it was time consuming, also difficult to submit entries. Others tried to help and get them to the right place. Deb Gottliebson has volunteered her time as a fair board member and president for about 20 years. Other members have contributed their time. It has to be an even more different process to get everything done without a fair coordinator. Some financial compensation and clerical assistance would seem warranted. Please do whatever might be feasible to assure them that their time and efforts are as appreciated. Hopefully, people of all ages in our community will be able to enjoy either participating or observing exhibits at the Dunn County Fair for years to come. Thank you in advance for your consideration regarding the above. Sincerely, Judy Wildner Ferguson. And then on Friday, September 15th at 11 a.m., the following communication was received. Dear Dunn County Supervisors, on Saturday, August 12th, I received in the mail a delinquent property tax notice from the Dunn County Treasurer. On Monday, August 14th, I went to the Dunn County Treasurer and paid the delinquent property tax, as well as the $148.65 interest and penalty fee. This was the first year our property taxes were not escrowed. I understand it is the property owner's responsibility to know when the property tax is due, and after paying the first half in January, I did not remind myself to pay the second half in July. Again, I understand that it is my responsibility, and I know a grace period is granted. However, the grace period is not applicable, as it was not until I received the notice from the Dunn County Treasurer that I had forgotten to pay the second half of the property taxes. The Dunn County Treasurer's office informed me I could attend the Dunn County Board meeting to present my case and would be allowed 3 minutes to do so. I stated I did not need 3 minutes to say, quote, I made a stupid mistake, end quote. I am regretfully now stating to all Dunn County that my error was my stupidity. I am respectfully requesting a departure from the Wisconsin statute for the $99.10 interest and the $49.55 penalty fee. I would greatly appreciate the consideration of a waived or reduced interest and penalty fee. Please see the attached notification letter received August 12th and the receipt of my payment dated August 14th. Respectfully, Lori Hanson. Those are all the public comments that were received.
All right. Now on to appointments. You have those at your table in front of you. I'm going to go ahead and suggest that we break out the Board of Supervisors appointment separately from the Zoning Board and ADRC. I will need a motion for the first. Supervisor Morehouse moves. Supervisor Witzel seconds. This would be the ADRC and the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Any speaking to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Dunn County Board of Supervisors, fulfilling the seat left vacant by Mike Rogers. Term expires April 2024. Pilar Gerasimo, I need a motion. Supervisor Morehouse moves. Supervisor Vandermeulen seconds. Any speaking to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Supervisor Gerasimo, if you will come up and be sworn in.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
Pilar Gerasimo,
Affirm that I will support
affirm that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the Office of County Supervisor
of the Office of County Supervisor
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I do so swear.
I do so swear.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're gonna have to sign this.
Congratulations.
This sign right there. Sorry, right up here. This is for me. This is for you.
Thank you.
Maybe see.
All right, on to 8, report of the county manager. Chris?
All right, you have in front of you, good evening, by the way. You have in front of you the purchase orders over $40,000. Those are our second part of our bond payments for this year. Any questions about that? Do I call it the first one happened earlier in the year? All right, and then very quickly, we continue to pick away on the 2024 budget. It's a process of continued refinement from here on out, and the numbers probably change almost daily. The executive committee did go through all of the new position requests and made recommendations to remove the recreational deputy from the sheriff's department, to stagger the hiring of the two DHS requests, one for the first of the year and one for mid-year. And then, as I indicated at our last meeting, I changed the request on an assistant county manager. That's you, yeah. Somehow. Good. I had changed the request on the assistant county manager to just set aside amount of money, $25,000 towards something that we could work to frame a position, some additional responsibilities to be added to an existing department head, and some money to be able to backfill a little bit of their responsibilities so that they would have maybe perhaps 25% of their time in order to fulfill the duties of an assistant county manager in addition to their regular duties. So with those changes, that was almost $200,000. And we're sitting right at, I believe, about the $6.2 million. Oh, it's a little hair less than 6 million. So that's where we're at this time. I would encourage you to go back and watch the committee or executive committee meeting from last week. There was a good discussion in that. And the next executive committee meeting as well in early October will be another an opportunity for you to hear more information and to we'll provide some options for funding of that gap. Any questions about any of that? If not, then I am going to turn the microphone over to David Minch. If you recall, we changed auditing firms early this year, very beginning of the year. We had Clifton Larson Allen for a long time. They had given us notice at the end of the year that as a result of some staffing concerns or staffing issues on their end, they would be unable to continue with us in 2023. And so we were in a position of requesting finding a new auditor. We put out an RFP for that and received no responses. But we did have interest in terms of some questions and had a slight bit of interest from a couple of different firms. So Sarah Stabino, our assistant finance director, reached out, and Kerber Rose was interested in becoming on board to be our auditor. So David will give you a little bit of background to their organization, but we worked with them. And I would just say on the front end, and he'll review this as well, you will see when we look at the information that they're draft documents, they won't change in terms of substance, in terms of the numbers. They'll look for any like typos or formatting issues in the report before it's finally issued. But I did think it was important for you to hear this information before we got much farther into budget. And being that this was the first year through and there were a lot of strings to tie up and new territory to navigate on the part of the audit firm and us, it took a little bit longer than we anticipate that it will take in the future. So with that, I will turn it over to Dave Minch.
All right. Well, thank you, Kristen. As she mentioned, my name is David Minch. I'm one of the two government audit shareholders at Kerber Rose. We work with 6 counties as well as numerous other large cities, villages, towns, and even a substantial number of school districts in the state of Wisconsin. And we're happy to have formed a partnership with Dunn County to serve as your auditor going forward. Tonight, I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna go through the results of the 2022 audit. As Kristen mentioned, it still has draft on it. But all of the numbers have been audited. Our documentation and work papers have been reviewed by the partners and also our quality control partner. So I'm confident that nothing will change. Just as far as our fiduciary responsibility and certain accounting standards, we just have to go through a few more motions to get these final documents issued, which we fully intend to do within the next couple days. But as Kristen reiterated, this is later than you typically receive your audit presentation. So we both felt that it was pertinent that we presented the results of the year now that we have the audit substantially completed. So with that, the first document that I'm going to jump to tonight is the audit opinion. This is essentially why the county has an audit done, and that is to receive an opinion on our financial statements. Our opinion is listed as the second paragraph. It states that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, each major fund, and the aggregate remaining fund information of Dunn County. So in other words, this is a clean or unmodified opinion on the county's financial statements. It's essentially the highest level of assurance that we can provide on a set of financial statements that we opine on. Next, we're going to look at the major governmental funds of Dunn County. And this includes the general fund, human service fund, debt service fund, and capital project fund. For starters, we'll look at the general fund. As you're most likely well aware, the general fund is the main operating fund of the county. And as of the end of 2022, the total fund balance in the general fund was about $19.2 million. The vast majority of this is the unassigned fund balance, which is really the working operating reserves of the county. And as auditors, one thing we like to do is benchmark where that unassigned fund balance is compared to the expenditures within the general fund. So for December 31st, 2022, for that fiscal year, there was about 25 million in expenditures in the general fund. This puts that unassigned fund balance at approximately 56%. That is a very strong unassigned fund balance from my perspective. When I compare and contrast Dunn County to some of the other counties and even large municipalities that we work with. So a very strong operating result for the general fund in the current year. One thing that I did want to point out to you that, and we'll cover this in a little bit more detail when we look at the Neighbors of Dunn County Fund this year. The Neighbors operated with an operating loss this year and subsequently a decrease in fund balance. So as part of that, since the county utilizes a pooled cash methodology within these funds, the general fund did have to advance the Neighbors a little over $2 million this year, which is showing up as a liability. And as of right now, it's intended that the Neighbors will pay that back in the future. We did have discussions with Kristen and Beata and also Sarah, about making that possibly a permanent transfer in the future. But that is really a management's decision of the county. The other thing I just wanted to point out is that all the governmental funds combined had an ending fund balance of about $21 million this year. Next, we'll look at the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance for all the governmental funds. Essentially, this is the income statement for these funds. I've already mentioned that the unassigned fund balance and even total fund balance for the general fund is very healthy. It's very strong. That's reiterated by the very positive operating year that the general fund had. There was an increase in fund balance of approximately $2.2 million this year. So very strong operating results there. The Human Service Fund this year, it is the county's policy to zero out that fund at the end of the year. And again, this year you can see that there was a transfer out, meaning that we did have a surplus in that fund that you could transfer back to the general fund. So from our perspective as auditors, the Human Service Fund also had a very strong year this year. The last thing that I want to point out here when we're looking at the governmental funds is that the overall governmental fund balance did decrease by about $11.5 million this year. Now, that might be shocking to some, but that was really a planned decrease. In 2021, the county entered into an advanced crossover refunding transaction for some of the outstanding debt that was there, meaning that debt was issued in one fiscal year and subsequently crossed over fiscal year ends before the call date happened when that bond could be repaid. So when you look at your debt service fund, you're going to see a substantial decrease of about $13.5 million this year. But that was largely due to the fact that we had these resources accumulated through a debt issuance to pay off some existing debt this year. Next, we'll look at the statement of net position for the proprietary funds. This is essentially the balance sheet for all of your business type activity funds, which are the neighbors of Dunn County, the Highway Department, and the Transit Commission. One thing I just wanted to point out here is that if you look at this statement of net position down in the non-current liabilities section, you will see that advance from other funds there, which is the dollar amount that the general fund had to contribute over or advance the neighbors of Dunn County to really make this fund whole. Since from a GAAP perspective, we can't present negative cash here with the pooled cash philosophy, so there was that advance. But overall, the Highway Department and the Transit Commission both had very strong operating years. The neighbors ended with a combined net position of about 13.8 million. The Highway Department was approximately 6.2, and the Transit Commission ended with about 1.7 in net position. When we look at the statement of changes, the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for these proprietary funds, you can see that the neighbors did operate or end up with an operating loss of a little over $3 million. A lot of that loss is subsidized through grant funding and then intergovernmental grants, which is considered non-operating revenue, which really left us with a decrease in net position of about $1.7 million this year. The Highway Department it did operate with an operating loss this year. However, that is largely subsidized with the general property taxes that are budgeted and recorded in that fund, and also some significant intergovernmental grants that are recorded there. So that ended that allowed the Highway Department to have a positive increase in net position of about 1.6, whereas the Transit Commission ended with an increase in net position of about just over $100,000 this year. The next thing we'll look at is just the outstanding debt of the county at December 31st, 2022. I've already mentioned that there was that substantial payoff of some existing debt that was out there. So that was about 13.9 million. But the thing I wanted to emphasize here is at the end of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022, the overall debt was approximately 31 million for the governmental activities. And then there was some new debt issued in the in the Highway Department of approximately 2.1 million. Now, this may seem like a lot of debt outstanding, but comparatively speaking, from my perspective, when I look at counties of your size and also other municipalities of your size, the county's in a very good financial position from a debt capacity standpoint. You're well under your legal limit of allowable debt that you can borrow. You're approximately $181 million under that, to be exact. But the one thing that I think is really critical as you're forecasting and really working towards, your subsequent year's budgets here, is that absent of any additional debt incurred, the county is scheduled to pay off all existing debt at the end of 2032. So again, very positive aspect of the county, knowing that it's got 10 years of debt outstanding right now. The last item on the financial statements that I want to just highlight here is the internal service fund. These are the workers' compensation and the health insurance fund. These are funded by charges to various business units, departments, and other funds within the county. So really the expenses flow through and then we charge out to our own internal funds here. But both of these funds had very strong operating years, which is a very positive thing, especially considering health insurance costs and even workers' comp costs are always on the rise. There were a couple transfers out, or a transfer out in the workers' comp fund that did decrease the net position approximately 620,000. But a lot of that decrease out did go into the health insurance fund. So we ended with a positive $1.6 million change in that position. But again, both very strong operating years for the county. The last thing that I just want to talk about here is that two additional reports that we issue with our audit is the internal control over financial reporting independent auditors report, and also the independent auditors report on compliance for each major federal and state program. Since the county expends more than $750,000 in federal expenditures in a given year, you're required to have a federal single audit, which is a compliance audit. And in Wisconsin, we're lucky enough that if you have a federal single audit, you have to have a state single audit. We are in the process of issuing the single audit report as well, which will be done in the next couple of days here. But on our independent auditors report on compliance over federal and state awards, we did not have any issues of non-compliance to report. So that will be a clean report. We did have some substantial testing based on our predetermined risk assessment that's put out by the federal government and also the state government. So we tested 3 major programs on the federal side and 4 major programs on the state side. So lots of transaction testing to make sure that the county is in compliance with the requirements of those grants. The last report here that I'm going to go over is the independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting. As auditors, we're not required to audit your internal controls, but we're required to take them into account while we're planning and performing the audit. And with that, anytime we identify a weakness, we need to evaluate it to see if it meets the definition of a material weakness, a significant deficiency, or simply an other matter. We do have 5 findings to note this year that we consider to be material weaknesses. 3 of these are continuing findings that have been presented to the county for the last couple of years, and 2 additional ones that we felt warranted, that we felt to, elevate and bring to everyone's attention just based on our recommendations that we've provided throughout our audit. And I just wanted to provide the context that anytime you do have a change in auditor, it's very common to have additional findings because audit is open to interpretation. And you get a different set of eyes looking at your financial statements. But I do just want to provide a little context behind these findings that are disclosed in the county's annual financial report. The first item is material account adjustments. There's certain things, you have an audit done to make sure that your financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP. And having audit adjustments is very common. It became evident to us early on that there was some things on the balance sheet that have carried forward for a number of years. And so we worked together with Sarah and the rest of the finance team to really reconcile a lot of that and clean that up throughout the course of our audit. So unfortunately, that just led to some material account adjustments. But we're committed to working with the county on understanding these and then, improving on those going forward. This finding might not be eliminated in 1 year, but the most important thing is that we strive towards eliminating more and more adjustments every year going forward. So as part of our relationship with the county, we'll work with the finance team to alleviate as many of those as possible. The next statement or the next finding here is the financial reporting finding. Accounting standards state that since you're responsible for the fair presentation of these financial statements, you're also required to prepare these financial statements. This is a finding that I think 95% of the municipalities and school districts that I work with in Wisconsin receive, simply because they contract with their auditor to assist in the preparation of this. It's just not cost beneficial to either take additional training or hire additional people to have the capacity to prepare these in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So this finding is more or less just a reminder that you contract with your audit firm to prepare the financial statements, but ultimately as management, you accept responsibility for these. The next finding here is the preparation of the schedule of federal and state awards. This finding goes hand in hand with the preparation of the financial statements. Uniform grant guidance states that you're required to prepare the schedule of federal and state awards in accordance with all of the requirements of uniform grant guidance. And within Wisconsin, the way that the Department of Health and Human Services really allocates their grants and changes that allocation on a given year. Most of the counties do contract with their auditor to assist in preparation for that. The funding splits behind various programs change from federal to state every year, so it's very convoluted. And it's just something, again, that's a reminder that we assisted with the preparation of those, or of that schedule. The next finding is the segregation of duties finding. This was a continuing finding from the prior year, but it's just one thing. Over the course of our audit, we noted that there's certain individuals within the county and in finance who bear a lot of responsibility for a lot of the functions that happen. And there's obviously very strong controls within the county, but this is just something that we brought to Kristen, Beata's, and Sarah's attention, that we feel that there could be improvements on, whether it's kind of reorganization of tasks or just simply doing a process chart evaluation, who's doing what. Ultimately, who's ever approving and reviewing all of the work, you would like to see them not post adjustments or even have access to post adjustments without some sort of formal review. It just creates an elevated risk to the county from our perspective that simple human errors or even possible fraud or theft could occur. I will just note that we did not find anything like that, but it just creates an elevated risk. So part of our responsibility as partners with the county was to bring this to your attention so that discussions could be had as far as how can we alleviate some of those things and change some responsibilities perhaps. And we've had some really great conversations with Kristen and everybody else about some of our concerns, and Kristen can elaborate more on this, but there's already been some things put in place to address some of our concerns. So a very positive outlook from our standpoint in regards to our comments. And I will just add that throughout our audits, we did have thoughts or concerns, and we communicated those. Everyone at the county has been very receptive to our recommendations as far as how to improve things. So that's very exciting to see from our standpoint as we, develop this relationship with the county. And then the last finding is just internal controls over cash. Again, we didn't find any issues with cash or anything that warranted any additional testing, but it became clear to us that the county operates under some circumstances as a very decentralized organization, and with that it became aware to us that not all of the bank accounts and bank reconciliations were being reviewed by a centralized person or under a centralized process. And again, this is just based on our experience as auditors, something that creates an elevated risk for the assets of the county. So one of our recommendations is that you evaluate your internal controls over cash and really come up with a centralized process for somebody to ultimately review and approve all of the bank accounts and bank reconciliations within the county. So with that, does anybody have any questions on anything that we covered tonight?
Seems to be a remarkably quiet room on this end.
All right. All right.
At this time, if I may, Mr. Chair, the committee administration did hear this report prior to this meeting, and we did recommend that this board receive it as a good and final audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Headland. Nick, do we need a motion on that? Okay, well, then we will accept the report.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much and have a great rest of your evening.
Okay. West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Report.
Good evening. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Scott Allen. I'm the new Executive Director for West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. Started back in May and overlapped for several weeks with the outgoing Executive Director, Lynn Nelson, who you may know for her many years of service to the commission and therefore to Dunn County. This is our kind of a standardized presentation, but we've tailored it to give you an update on some of the projects, programs that we've been working on through and with Dunn County and the communities in the county over the last year to year and a half. But to start, can I give a brief background on regional planning commissions? West Central Regional Planning was created under state statute back in 1971. So we've been in existence for over 50 years already. And I always like to say, I know the feeling. In terms of what the regional planning commissions in West Central in particular were charged with through that process over 50 years ago, is that charged with community planning, demographics, economic development, grants, mapping, natural resources planning, public administration, transportation. I'll talk a little bit more about these a little bit more specific detail later on. There are 9 regional planning commissions in the state of Wisconsin. We're listed here as number 9 only because of the alphabet. I heard one longtime executive director, another regional planning commission say he likes to tout the fact that he's part of one of the top 9 regional planning commissions in the state. But West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission consists of 7 counties. I'll show a little bit more specific map beyond this. You can see on the map here, it's a kind of gold or bronze color, showing the 7 counties that make up your regional planning commission. Those include Polk, St. Croix, Barron, Dunn, Chippewa, Eau Claire, and Clark counties. So we stretch from the St. Croix River on the west, cities of Hudson and Osceola, that area, all the way to the east with Abbotsford, Colby, on the eastern boundary of Clark County. You can see the map here showing some of those others in the list of those with their very geographically centric names, West Central being one of those. So we are governed by a 21-member commission. Appointments are made by county boards with 3 per county. So that's how you get 7 counties, 3 per county. You can see the 21. And then there's also an executive committee, which consists of 1 appointment per county. So one of those 3 from per county then serve on an executive committee. And so again, that's a 7-member executive committee. The commission meets typically every other month, typically the odd numbered months, and the executive committee meets in those even numbered months. And they review things such as kind of staff policies and smaller agreements and things like that. So here's a little bit more specific map just to show you that that full geographic region. In terms of the commissioners here from Dunn County, thank you for the service from Supervisor Morehouse, Supervisor Quinn, and Steve Rasmussen. Mr. Rasmussen serves as the executive committee member on behalf of Dunn County. In terms of staffing, we are now at 15 staff positions. We just added another senior planner. If you can read that there on the left are the senior planner positions identified there. Ross Petersack just started in April. Should note that within the last year, we've had 5 new staff members, just 1 additional staff position, but 5 new members. And we're actually recruiting for assistant planner position. Michael Mills departed at the beginning of the month. And you can see here in terms of kind of color coding, kind of the gold color showing the 2 administrative staff, our office manager and our financial manager. And then the blue being the planning staff. And then the green being those serving with the Regional Business Fund, of which you'll hear a little bit more here shortly from Regional Business Fund Manager Toby Lemieux. So kind of what's the goal of West Central Regional Planning? We assist units of government in planning for physical, social, and economic development needs of the region. We do this primarily in 3 different ways. We serve as coordinating organization, we assist units of government, and we provide technical assistance. So it's pretty generic and broad-based, but I'll drill down a little bit more in terms of those types of services here. In terms of 4 general areas, again, if you recall back to that one of those initial slides, kind of what we were charged with back in 1971 has been kind of distilled down to these kind of 4 general areas: the economic development, transportation, community development, and conservation and mapping. In terms of community development, you can see there's kind of a longer list, and that's kind of, as planners, that's what we typically focus on primarily. So we assist with county and community comprehensive plans, grant writing and administration. I'll talk a little more about that later here. Hazard mitigation planning, we help with county level hazard mitigation plans. The same with outdoor recreation plans. In terms of conservation mapping, been assisting a little bit more lately with water quality planning, in particular with the MPO situation in terms of city of Menominee and that urban area identified there. And then also providing mapping and graphics primarily related to that. Economic development, transportation, just to highlight a few of these too. Again, administration of revolving loan funds. Toby will talk a little bit about that more later. Project consultation, grant writing administration. Again, I'll mention a specific project here in a moment. County economic and population profiles that you have in your folder, your 2-pocket folder on the left side and the back is the 2023 economic profile we provided for Dunn County. We do that for each of the 7 counties. We also provide some population profile handouts for individual villages and cities. But that's the Dunn County overall economic profile that we produce every year. In terms of transportation, that's a key focus of ours as well. Been working a bit on safe routes to school plans throughout all of those counties in various school districts and schools themselves. And then we also been working quite a bit with pedestrian bicycle facilities planning, or as we like to say, bike and ped plans. So what more specifically has been happening in Dunn County? It's a long list here, but again, just to highlight several of these, right at the top, in coordination with WEDC, it's the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, we provided administration of Main Street Bounce Back program related to COVID relief funds. Those are $10,000 grants awarded to 860 organizations in the region, and that included 49 in Dunn County, totaling almost $500,000. We also staffed the stormwater outreach coordinator position for the Rain to Rivers of Western Wisconsin. Dunn County members include City of Menominee, as well as UW Stout. We recently hosted a Saltwise Wisconsin expo or program just several weeks ago, helping private kind of snowplow drivers and companies that deal with salt management in the winter, just to help them understand and work on more efficient uses of their salt to help protect runoff, especially come springtime. We had over 75 participants in that training alone just a couple weeks ago. We also participate in West Central Wisconsin Rail Coalition. We're an ex officio member, just providing technical support and coordination with that. We also similarly provide similar administration to the region's broadband implementation group. And kind of a highlight very recently, you may recall, in terms of developing housing studies for the county, as well as the city of Menominee and the village of Boyceville. Those were just presented to you just a short while ago this summer. And now looking at implementation of those different housing studies as well. Kind of jumping down, again, we're conducting those safe routes to school implementation. We're also doing planning, but in terms of implementation for the Eau Claire School District, of which town of Rock Creek in the county is included in that school district. And then just wanted to highlight as well, we've been assisting Stepping Stones with administration of Neighborhood Investment Fund finances for construction of new homeless shelters. So those are some of the bigger grant projects we've been working on. That's one of the few that we've been working on in the region right here in Dunn County. So with that, I will turn things over to Toby Lemahue, our Regional Business Fund Manager, and she'll talk more specifically about that part of our services.
All right, thank you. So Toby Lemahue with Fund Manager at the Regional Planning Commission, like Scott said. And most of my time is spent on the contract that the Regional Planning Commission has with the private nonprofit called the Regional Business Fund. There is a 9-member board of directors that oversees the Regional Business Fund. But again, we're staffed by the Regional Planning Commission and there's a contract for services between the two. Our programs are flexible. We offer low interest loans to businesses that cannot get traditional financing or cannot get all of their financing through a traditional way. So we're not here to compete with the banks or the credit unions, but rather offer an additional source of capital if and when needed. In your folders on the right-hand side, I believe there's going to be our annual report and our brochure. So I'm not going to go into all of the details of these programs, but you can look at our website. You can take a look at that brochure. You can also contact us if you have any questions about our programs, and we can talk through those with you. Since 2007, the Regional Business Fund has assisted 84 businesses, including 43 startups, with almost $4.5 million in financing. And those businesses have projected to create or retain 866 jobs just in Dunn County. Some recent projects I think are also included in your packet, but they include Shear and Style in Boyceville, Main Street Salon and Bronken Creek Performance Horse Retirement in Colfax, JD Outsource Partners, Tiny Tree Academy, Mechineering and Design, and Whispering Emerald Ridge Game Farm in or near Menominee, and Pine Creek Processing in Ridgeland. And then on this next slide, we'll just get into a little bit more detail about another startup company that we assisted in Boyceville. What's Your Scoop is a startup mobile ice cream trailer based in Boyceville. You might have seen them around this last summer, though. They are attending many outdoor events, and they have regular hours in downtown Boyceville, and they are also available to rent for special events. The goal for What's Your Scoop is to provide employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities to create a fun team building environment within the community. When launching, the business was unable to obtain traditional financing, so they utilized our microloan program for $30,000, and they purchased the food trailer, equipment, and inventory. So that microloan program is meant to assist those startup companies when they can't get that financing. We do require a downturn letter, but it's an option for a lot of startups in our region. Just in closing, I'd like to recognize the valuable contributions that Dunn County residents make to our organization. We have a board member from Dunn County, Clark Yolitz, and then we also have a loan committee. All of the requests go through a loan committee for decisioning of those requests, and in Dunn County requests go through the Dunn County Loan Committee. Those members are Paul Bauer, Steve Fallhaber, Mary Shepard-Spaeth, Chris Smith, Gary Steen, Andrea Renata, and Clark Yolitz. And also just a quick thank you to our partners, the Dunn County EDC and other economic development partners, to help be our boots on the ground to spread information about our programs to businesses and get those referrals to us. So with that, I think Scott and I would be willing to take any questions you might have on the Regional Business Fund or the Regional Planning Commission.
Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On these programs for Dunn County, if Dunn County got to pay for all of them, or is some of it because we belong to that regional has already been paid for?
The business financing programs?
Well, just in general, like, the projects that you're helping out.
Sure. I'll talk about the Regional Business Fund. Those dollars are housed with the nonprofit, and those are just lent out to businesses at an interest rate that gets paid back and just kind of recycles through and really pays for staffing too. So that for that program, those are available to all Dunn County businesses, but Scott can answer in terms of the other programs.
What I was asking, like the housing study,
Right.
was that paid for by Dunn County, or is that, like you said, just part of our being a member
Yeah,
for
great.
that services?
Great question. Yeah, we do. That type of project would be a contracted project, so it'd be separate above and beyond your normal levy. So there's a kind of a levy component to each year. Each of the 7 counties do pay kind of a levy, and it's set by the state in terms of again, it's based on equalized value. So each county pays kind of a prorated rate or a per capita rate. So that it would be above and beyond that, but we provide but that levy amount is utilized to help kind of pay down the actual cost of that, if that makes sense. So whereas we don't necessarily directly compete with, through, an RFP process or something like that, like you talked about with your auditor situation earlier, we do provide like a housing study at probably a discounted rate than you might see from a private consultant because of your membership as a part of the commission. So. Yep.
And I'll
Mr.
just,
Chairman,
yes, Supervisor Morehouse wanted to address.
yes, members and Supervisor Bjork. The housing study was paid for with a grant from the Community Foundation of Dunn County and a community development block grant fund that the staff from regional planning wrote and submitted for us. There were no county dollars.
Thank you for clarifying that. I should also say again, your levy dollars do help kind of provide any match that may be required. Not necessarily one for one, but it can help go towards those kind of matching grant dollars that we can assist with in terms of writing those grant applications.
Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Thank you. I've spoke to Scott before but I never was able to say, one of your projects is one of my favorite. What's Your Scoop? They've been at the Dunn County Fair the last couple of years and been very popular. And I carry one of their cards that you get filled up and you get a free scoop. So, continue success for them, I hope.
Excellent.
And then the other thing is, and I don't want to beat a dead horse and I don't want to seem not grateful for work that people do, but it seems odd to me that membership from Dunn County is not through the county board, but I assume through the county chairman. And Steve Rasmussen hasn't been on the county board for a number of years. And I would certainly think that this county board would have people up to the task of being part of that committee. And personally, I'd like to see 3 members from the county board on that, not just an appointed members from, maybe the community or what's Steve's thing. And then to be as polite as possible, I would really appreciate that if Dunn County has people committed to work regionally, that there's a diversity of opinion. I think we all are very proud of where we stand and where everybody knows kind of, if this person leans one way or the other. A couple of the main issues were the railroad. Maybe everybody doesn't think it's a great idea to have railroad. Or you talked about the support of the homeless shelter. Fine and dandy, but what was it discussed and voted on that we were going to, that regional planning was going to put money into that? Tom said, and we've talked, and he says there's, I can't remember the term, but wide range of political opinions that are part of that board. But I would like to see the Board of Supervisors. I'm not looking for a job. I would like to see the Board of Supervisors, select people that serve in a regional area. And I had a chance to read your organization. I had a chance to have 2 days with housing study, with the study itself, and then sort of how we're going to fix the problems, second sheet. And I mean, it's fantastic, the information that's there. But I, like other members have said, this is pretty nice. How much did it cost Dunn County? And, I just wish that I had a feeling that you were frugal with our dollars. Thank you.
I believe the appointments to the board there are in fact board approved. So you did
Okay.
have the opportunity to vote on that at the beginning of this term.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. So in terms of the Neighborhood Investment Fund, again, the Regional Planning Commission is providing grant administration for that. So again, City of Menominee project. And as again, member of the region, they reached out to us to ask for help in terms of managing that pretty complex grant project. We do that with other projects as well. We're doing one in the city of Augusta in Eau Claire County with their community well project. Again, there's a lot of work that goes in that in terms of certifying payrolls and things of that sort that again, the city of Menominee didn't have the capacity in their view to handle that. So they reached out to us to help with that grant administration. So not necessarily a project that we were approving or a part of, we were simply participating in the grant administration part of that. So it's the city of Menominee project that we're helping them with the grant side of things. So just to clarify that, that's the types of things that we do with the grant administration. We do also grant applications. So we assist with putting grants together that maybe cumbersome, complex, time consuming for communities to take on. And that's another service we provide as well. Another recent one is Clark County, town of Fremont, just received a similar community development block grant for public facilities award through the state for a new fire station and community center. Again, they applied for it on their own. They received that grant and they reached out to us to help do the administration part of that. So, we're not involved with the design of the plan or where it's located or anything like that. We're just helping with all the minutia that you can imagine goes into all the financial side of things. So, but that's what we're here to help with as well. If you see a project and a grant that you're interested in, but don't have quite the capacity to undertake that yourselves, let us know.
Certainly. Sorry, Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up a little bit on that, I'm a member of the CRT committee and the Dunn County Fair Board. And I called it planting the seed here 2 months ago. And the seed is, if we have homeless families with children located here, in the new facility, and the Dunn County Fair is on, we're going to see to it that those kids have an opportunity, are invited, or even chaperoned to the Dunn County Fair. And University Extension has a intern AmeriCorps, I believe it's called, that I'm just adding a little more water to the seat. There is nothing that I'd like to see better than if we're going to have homeless families in Dunn County and they're 1 block away from the Dunn County Fair, we should see to it that they get the opportunity to visit the Dunn County Fair.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork. Any other questions? Any of the folks online? Does not look like it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
All right, on to item 9, reports of departments, corporation, council, facilities, and treasurer. Corporation Council, you're up first. Take it away, Nick.
Good evening. Supervisor Hagan approached me earlier this evening with some questions. And as I got to reviewing my written report, I realized I put last year's report in your packet instead of this year's report. We come so late in the year. The report is technically supposed to be for fiscal year 2022. And I had always called them the 2022 report. At the urging of our former county manager, Mr. Miller, I changed that because we wanted to start including more information about what's happening now. We come in September. And so a lot of stuff has happened between January 1st and today. I will send that. I was actually in the process of sending that out right as Supervisor McCullough called my name. So I'll send the report out. it has information in it very comparable to what was in there, the reimbursement for child support, some of the process that we do for various items. I'll clarify, we do employment law only for the county. So we deal with county employees, and it's these are confidential matters, so we can't address specific instances, but generally I can say that when a manager is looking to either explore or recommend discipline, HR and the corporation council are involved. And when there's a termination recommended, the county manager, well, our policy requires the county manager, HR and corporation council meet with the manager and discuss whether the facts support the recommendation for discipline, and to make sure that all the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. And make sure I get that right. Anyway, so I really do apologize. I'll send you a new report. I'm going to send it to Andrew and to all of the supervisors and to the county manager. You'll get that before the end of the meeting. One of the things I wanted to tell you about is we have, I don't think Christian is here, in August, we filled a vacant assistant corporation counsel position, and we've hired a new attorney named Christian Farina. He comes to us from Waukesha County, where he was working as like a special prosecutor in the district attorney's office there. Barbara's been working with him, getting him acclimated to the child support, guardianship, mental commitment proceedings, and we've been also working with some ordinance projects. Ideally, when we have a full staff, we can spread out the work a little more and hopefully bring things to you more quickly. The county board and to the departments. Christian couldn't be here this evening. He apologizes. He had a family obligation that had been previously scheduled, and so I know he wanted to be here tonight, but I told him, your family, you gotta spend with your family. So the one thing I wanted to do, I usually present a written report. I'll take any questions if you have any. And then what I do is I talk about something that our office does, just try to highlight some activity that we're involved in or that we do regularly. A few years ago, we talked about tax foreclosure. That's always an interesting topic, I find. And so I'm going to talk about it a little bit again this evening, and I'll try to be brief. Since I've already used most of my time apologizing. We do tax foreclosures at a point where property owners haven't paid their taxes and they're delinquent for a little over 2 years. The treasurer issues a tax certificate for the property and it becomes eligible for foreclosure. We generally wait a little more than just the day after those 2 years because the treasurer engages in a lot of outreach. Our office engages in a lot of outreach. We really want to help people get this important financial obligation caught up. And it helps, frankly, it helps the county's bottom line too. When we receive the taxes, we can do our stuff with it. So we do a lot of outreach. We file once every year, pretty much pretty much once a year. It might be a little longer, a little shorter than 365 days on occasion, but we file. We do a lot of outreach, as I said, and we managed to shrink down the list of properties that are eligible for foreclosure greatly. And I think the last time, what was it, 4? We started with like 85 properties and we end up having 4 coming to court. And they're generally not really desirable properties. When we do have you know, a good quality, a home in good condition, it's usually because the property owners have forgotten to pay taxes, or they are having some kind of financial difficulty, and they feel helpless or even ashamed about it. And instead of taking care of things, they kind of just go on with life, and this brings it to a head, and we end up, the Planning, Resource and Development Committee ends up considering a request to repurchase from the former owner. And in my experience, that's pretty much the way it's always been handled for properties that are you know, homesteads with a home or a dwelling in good condition. What I wanted to talk to you mostly about, though, is that in last year, beginning in April of 2022, there was a new law that came into effect that has is very impactful on the disposition of proceeds of sale. It used to be under the old law, former owners were notified that if they wanted to receive some of the proceeds of sale, they had to provide us with a notice. Only homestead properties were eligible for this. And there was a formula that the statutes set out to determine how the county and the former owner would share in the disposition, or share in the proceeds. The new law entitles former owners to receive the net proceeds from the sale of the property, regardless of whether it's a homestead property or an investment property, vacant land. Sometimes there's under the law, homestead property has to have been used by the person's house, their dwelling, during the previous 5 years. So sometimes we'll get a house that hasn't been lived in for 6-7 years because it's dilapidated. It's in really bad condition. The roof leaks. I mean, we took a house once since I've been here. There was a hole. You could drop a Volkswagen through it in the roof. There was a hole, and there was a tree growing in the house and coming out the hole. So the person that owned that property had deceased, and their children, who were living out east, continued to pay the taxes for several years. And then I think they came out and looked at it and said, nah, we don't want it. So they quit, and we did foreclosure. Now, any property whatsoever, whether it's a homestead or not technically homestead, but has a dwelling of some nature or quality on it, or investment property, vacant land, becomes eligible. The former owner is entitled to receive the net proceeds. Now, the counties can deduct the cost of foreclosure, the costs associated with sale, and the amount of taxes that have been due on the property up to the time of foreclosure, and the taxes that would have been due on the property in the year of sale if the county hadn't taken the property. But the rest of it then has to now go to the former owner. And most of the cases, that's really not too much of a problem. A lot of properties, the amount of taxes due are more than the value of the property. There are a lot of little parcels out there that are 66 feet wide and 300 feet long, because at one point in time they were intended to be a town road or a part of a subdivision. and the conveyances didn't occur the way they were planned and someone lost it. Some people have driveways that are separate parcels, 66 feet wide and 100, 250 feet long. So sometimes they lose these properties, they get sold back, but we have a lot of properties where, or let's say the county highway department takes a little bit of the right angle out of a curve. So instead of having a 15-mile-an-hour corner that's very tight, we'll have a 30-mile-an-hour corner that's rounded, more gentle curvature in it, and safer at slightly higher speeds. In farm country, that takes the farmer's little bit on the inside of the curve and puts it on the outside of the curve, and the landowner may not actually own the property on the other side. So we take triangles, little triangles, 0.15 acres adjacent to the county highway, and they're really not marketable. We try to get the adjoining landowners to take them. But we now have to hunt down, and sometimes, and that's one of the problems with the new statute. The Wisconsin Counties Association has actually solicited participation by corporation councils to participate in a work group to try to develop uniform procedures to apply this law. So the county can recoup costs, but the rest of it has to go to the former owner. The impacts that we we used to be able to sell property, and most of the time, if there was anything left after the tax liability was settled out, we'd be able to put that in the general fund. That's not the case anymore. So there are aspects of the law that are unclear. So sometimes we have former owners, their whereabouts aren't known. We simply don't know where they are. We send mail to them and it comes back. And we look and we don't know where they are. We'll check to see if there's an obituary online or a probate estate that's been done somewhere in the state for them. And but there are properties where we don't know where the owner is. So what do we do when we can't find the owner? If we sell the property and there are funds, proceeds from the sale, they're retained by the treasurer and they have to be retained for 5 years and accounted for. And so that's a question. What efforts do we have to make to locate an owner? I was just down, as a number of you were, I was just down in the Wisconsin Dells earlier in the week. And the Corporation Council Association meets on Tuesday during the WCA convention. And Sauk County has a property that lies on the river that's worth about $1 million. And it's off the tax roll now because they foreclosed. But the owner passed away and they have no information about heirs, next of kin, anyone, that might have an interest, a legal interest in this property. And so they're in a kind of a dilemma. We haven't had a situation like that yet, but you never know. So I just wanted to inform you that the impact on revenue, the impact on revenue that we get from proceeds from sale is pretty substantial. So, and if there are any questions about generally, I guess, I pretty much covered the same topics in last year's report as I did in this year's, but you didn't get this year's yet. So if anyone has questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And I'll note on the law that Nick was referring to, I believe that's the direct result of a Supreme Court case in Hennepin County. So there is some discussion of exactly how far back in time it goes retroactively. So that's one of those exciting things for future county governance.
Yeah, the case, Barbara and I were talking about this today. I think the case in Hennepin County can be distinguished from, I think the facts are particular enough that having this general rule wouldn't have been compelled by that decision. But the legislature enacted, or the legislature passed it, the governor signed it, and so it's the law in Wisconsin, and we must follow it.
Any questions for Nick? Any of the folks online? Okay, thank you, Nick. Next up is facilities. Scott, come on up.
Good evening, everyone. So the Facilities Department of Dunn County was traditionally, has been for a number of years, part of the Public Works Department. In January of 22, it was dissolved and made its own department. The Facilities Department takes care of county-owned buildings, county parks, county-owned shooting ranges. The transfer station was put into facilities to handle. My report showed square footages, acreages, miles of sidewalks and paved trails that we take care of. Facilities department consists of myself as the director, an administrative specialist, one maintenance specialist, which is at the Neighbors of Dunn County, 2 facilities technicians, 4 facilities workers, 3 full-time custodians, and 2 part-time custodians, which are at Neighbors of Dunn County. Currently, we have a couple of vacancies of facility workers, which we have 1 starting on Monday, and 1 vacancy of a custodian full-time, and that is getting filled on someone starting on Monday. So we're keeping things going there as far as employees. That's a current status. Normal job duties for our facilities technicians and workers is to complete repairs and projects as needed for Dunn County for different departments. And that covers all of our departments, I guess. I don't think there is one department that we haven't done something for. We try to do all the projects and maintenance tasks without hiring outside contractors. And we've got that down where there's very few things that we have to hire outside contractors for. The facilities staff all of them are friendly, courteous, respectful to the other employees. And I think things are handled very professionally. They also are involved in an on-call for the Neighbors of Dunn County. So they do a rotation. It ends up being a 7-man rotation. Neighbors of Dunn County is a 24-hour facility. So it's nice to have somebody able to do that, and being a 7-man rotation, it doesn't get them on where they're on call every week. It divides it up and they get a good break on it. Daily activities is the preventive maintenance, try to make sure that something doesn't happen, catch it before it does, kind of thing. And then they do work orders that come in from different departments or anything that needs to be done, as well as things that arise like a water leak or a plug toilet or somebody trips a breaker somewhere, something like that. Facility staff also takes care of the fleet vehicles that we have. Currently, we have 8 fleet vehicles, fleet cars, 2 minivans, and 1 larger capacity van with a wheelchair lift on it, which helps out with the Neighbors, since the Neighbors bus is slated to be replaced. Then this van helps out and they can haul some more people with wheelchairs. And that's always available if the Neighbors bus happens to be broke down because of something. Included in the infrastructure and places that facilities takes care of is 19 county-owned parks. They're all over the county. Some parks are larger than others. That includes the 3 shooting ranges that are on county-owned. We work with many organizations and groups to take care of all this stuff. Shooting ranges, there's club for each one that takes care of stuff. They do the maintenance, they raise money and put it all in there. Other organizations that help out raise money and put time and effort into our county parks. Anyone have any questions?
Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Thank you. Scott, you guys cover a lot of area and I think you do a good job. I just wanted to mention, I think Ms. Wildner's letter today kind of spoke to a situation that the Fair Board faces, in that I think in years past, Mercedes was available for the Fair Board for some of the stuff, and I don't understand it. I just keep hearing, we sure miss Mercedes. Or is it Mercedes? You know who I mean? And again, I don't have any idea on how that problem is corrected, but she sure is a missed asset for the Fair Board. And thank you for your work.
Thank you, Larry. Just to let you know that we are working toward solving some of the fair issues within office. Mercedes is back in the facilities office in our suite, and we have made provisions so that people can drop their things off without someone being there, and it's secure. So help make things go better.
Anyone else? Seeing none, you are off the hook.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. Treasury, Sophia. And it looks like Dan just took Supervisor Vandermeulen's laptop to live on the farm.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Sophia Jevney. I'm the Dunn County Treasurer. I was appointed to this position April of 2021. So I've been in this position for about 2.5 years. I have been with Dunn County for 16. I worked mostly in finance with public health and then primarily in the finance department prior to that. I am in an elected position, so I will have to run in 2024. And I did include my annual report in your packet, and I'll just do kind of a brief overview and then we can discuss any questions you might have. So the treasurer's office is, as many people, we keep the purse strings as far as anyone is concerned. Any dollars that come in and out of the county come through our office. We also, we prepare taxes, we collect all delinquent taxes, we invest the county funds. There's technically an investment team, which consists of myself, the county manager, as well as Beata, the CFO. So we work on that together. We assist corporate counsel in the in-rem process, like Mr. Lang spoke of earlier. As far as what we've been up to, I'll just do a couple brief overviews. Investments have been a top priority in the past year. We had a few CDs that were arriving at maturity, so I did some research regarding that. We moved them from one company to another, increasing the interest rate from 0.80 to 4.75. So that was about a year ago. It was last November. And that, along with the other investments, we will accrue about $500,000 in interest this year. Part of that is our due diligence. The other part is the interest rate is just much better than it has been for the past 2 years. So as far as taxes go, Dunn County has a total of, in 2022, 32,657 parcels. The treasurer's office processes, calculates, and prints all of those tax bills. We print them for all of the 30 municipalities, and we work with all of the 30 municipalities. For first installment, we collect 13, and for the second installment, we collect all 30. So anyone who hasn't paid in full in their first installment, we're collecting for everyone. So when we're collecting for a municipality, we are taking any calls from the municipality that they may have, any from the taxpayers as well. And we're just working with them. And then I personally have to do settlement three times a year for all 30 municipalities. So I do it in December. I do it at the end of first collection, which is usually the first to second week in February. And then for August, we have to pay out all of the municipalities as well as the school districts, technical colleges, all of that information. And with that, I send out the information. The municipalities all have to review their own records to verify that they agree before I submit all of that information to the state of Wisconsin. So so that's just a brief overview. I did list, this is information that I've listed the past 2 years. I have the top 10 taxpayers that are listed in Dunn County, as well as the uncollected taxes. So we just finished up collection for 2022 in July 31st, and then we always print a sale book. So we legally have to print a sale book September 1st. So if someone hasn't paid their taxes, that is listed. So if you're looking at your packet in 2022, there were 485 parcels in the tax roll of 2022 that have not been paid. So we have to send notification out to those folks, basically stating that in 2 to 4 years, we are able to take back your property if you don't catch up on your property taxes. So that was just a brief overview over my report. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Otherwise, I was trying to figure out what I could highlight, something that our office does that is riveting, and I determined that mill rate overview was a good one. So I'm gonna make it as brief as possible because I know it's been a long meeting.
I do have one question for you.
Yes.
Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, I want to have board members turn to the page where it says top 10 taxpayers. And this is kind of a shout out for the highway department. And business rolls on 18 wheels. And when you look at what rolls off the in and out of Dunn County on exit 45, you got the #1 taxpayer. You definitely probably also got Minnesota Mining, Cardinal Glass is in there, ConAgra, Bill's Distributing. Those trucks that Bill's hauled out are usually filled with heavy liquids. So that's what I've been told anyway. Anyway, this is evidence of the work that needs to be done on exit 45 by just looking at the taxpayers that live there. So, and one other thing, your office has been really good to me when I realized when the Dunn County Fair is over, so is the July 31st. And they say, you better get in here in the next 5 days and you'll be okay. And I did. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork.
Okay, so back to mill rate overview. So we're gonna the picture that I took is of the 2022 tax rolls. So what we just finished processing for the town of Hay River. So just as a brief overview, a mill rate is government entities set a mill rate based upon the total value of property within their jurisdiction. That helps provide, like we know, expenses, roads, schools, emergency services, all of that information. And then just so you understand a little bit of the context of what I'll show you in the next few slides, just a brief overview. So a statement of assessment is an official listing of the statutory classification and assessed values of all property within that municipality. So town, village, city. All of that information is gathered by the assessors and sent to the state, and then the state verifies that information, sends it to the counties. The levy, all of you are familiar with the levy. Total gross mill rate is the total of county, local, school, technical colleges, and special districts, if applicable, added together. Each individual mill rate is calculated by the levy amount divided by the statement of assessment, which again is gathered by the assessors, verified by the state and sent back to us. The state school levy tax credit, which you will see on the following screens, is something that the state lets us know what that is. We have no control over that. The state says this is what your tax levy credit is. And then there's a mill rate amount that's assigned to that. The total net mill rate is the gross mill rate minus the state. So it's all of the so it's the county, the local government, the school district, the technical college, all of those added together, minus that school tax credit equals that total mill rate. So that for everyone's, so that is what shows up on your tax. So if you're looking at your taxes and you're looking at the mill rate, it's the net mill rate, which includes all of those things above. The equalized value, just in a very simple term, the equalized value basically balances the tax burden between all of the municipalities. And then the assessed value, which all of us are more familiar with, is what they're assessing your actual property at, and that balances the tax burden between all the properties. Okay. So this is the first page of the statement of assessment. Okay, so this again is for the town of Hay River. And this amount right here is the amount that we're looking at when we're looking at the county and the local. So the levy amounts are what, okay, how do I explain this? So the state will send all of the apportionment to the municipality. The municipality then says, okay, so for each of those entities, we need this amount of levy for the county, this amount of levy for our area, school district, and so on. Okay, so in the town of Hay River, the levy amount for the county, they had it $447,853.69, and then their local amount was the $251,000. Okay, and so to figure out this gross mill rate for each of those lines, we're taking the statement of assessment total down here. Sorry, everyone on that end, down here, and we're taking that we're taking the levy amount on that line item and we're dividing it by the statement of assessment to come up with the mill rate. Okay, so that goes for the county line, that's for the local level line, and the school districts, as well as the technical colleges. So in the town of Hay River, there are two school districts in that area. So then each school district has to have a different mill rate. And depending upon where your property lands, that's how it's calculated. So in this case, if we look at the statement of assessment, so you can see that the Boyceville Community School is the amount that we're looking for the statement of assessment total is 65, okay? And then you can follow that down here. Well, you can see that the difference in the levy amounts are vast. So the school district of Colfax is asking for $2,194. And the school district of Boyceville is asking for $599,000. So when we calculate at the end, the likelihood of if your property lands in the village, in the school district of Colfax, is probably going to be less than if your property lands in the school district of Boyceville. And then the technical colleges is the same deal. So in this situation, the school district of Colfax just has that $319,900. So that's the amount that we're using. So you'll see here. So you'll see here it's different, right? So when we're looking at that specific school district, it's $319,900. When we're looking at the school district of Boyceville, it's a 65, because we're looking at the total lines. So this is the entire picture of everything that we saw. So we have the county levy, the local levy, the school district levy, and the technical college levy. And then that pertains to each of those lines on the statement of assessment. So each of them have a different mill rate. And then each school district has its own mill rate. So if I'm calculating for the village of Boyceville, I'm adding the school district of Boyceville, I'm adding all of these mill rates, this mill rate, and I'm minusing that state levy tax, because like I said before, the state notifies us what that is. Okay. So in this purpose, if your if your property lies within the school district of Boyceville, this is your mill rate. And if it lies within the school district of Colfax, this is your mill rate. So then, we just gave an example. So for a home assessed at $150,000, right? So you're taking the total assessed value and you're timesing it by the mill rate. It varies by $300 depending upon, so you're in the same municipality. Your property lies within a different school district, so your taxes are different. So that's a lot of information. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has them. I would also like to open it up that if anyone wants to dig deeper, we are more than happy to do that. Just call me, email me. You can come sit in our office and we do this. I mean, I know it's a lot of information, but we eat and breathe this. So when we're doing this for 30 municipalities. And that's all before we can continue taxes. So that's all I have. Any questions? Nope.
Doesn't look like it.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Sophia. And I will note, for people who are interested, there was a very nice presentation on how the mill rate is calculated and how it works at the exec committee. So if you tune into the exec committee video from last week, very informative video. Thanks to Chris and Dan Dunbar for that. Okay. On to item 10, consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee. Item A, resolution 2023 budget adjustment for DHS, health, sheriff, administration, CDC administration, HR, and highway. And this is the pretty typical, we get grants that come in. If we want to spend them, we have to adjust our budget to accommodate that, so the money can go in and the money can go out. It's largely grant funding and other funding bookkeeping, and we do these on a fairly regular basis. I will need a motion. Supervisor Morehouse moves, Supervisor Gary Bjork seconds. Any speaking to the motion? Okay, seeing none, this is a roll call vote. And because it's budget, it requires 2/3 majority. So we are going to use our technology.
If you tap the screen on your microphone, you can vote at any time. While they're doing that, for those of you joining us at home, Supervisor Calabrese.
Yes.
Supervisor Steen.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Robinson.
Yes.
I think that's all we've got online. All right. And motion passes. On to 10B, ordinance amending chapter of the Code of Ordinances and creating a fiscal policy. This is the second reading, so the motion is already on the floor. Does anyone want a recap of this? Pilar, if you would like us to run through this, you are more than welcome to.
I'll play catch up on the next stuff.
Okay. So any speaking to the motion? Absolutely.
All right, so you heard the audit report, and note that our current ratio of our fund balance to our expenditures is at 56.4%. Meaning that we would have fund balance sufficient to cover 56.4% of our expenditures. The fund balance policy the fund balance ordinance policy set forth in the ordinance would have us set that at 50% instead of the 56%. that would be roughly $1.6 million in, as it currently exists, that could then be utilized for capital improvements, one-time, large one-time purchases such as highway projects and or paying down of debt.
All right, Supervisor Vandermeulen. You have your, did you have a question or your light's on? No worries, I've been there myself. Supervisor Kinnear. Nope. Okay. Anybody online? Apparently we are ready to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. On to item 11, consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances coming to the county board from the standing committees. A, Planning, Resources and Development, Ordinance, Rezone, Town of Menominee. Can I get a motion? Supervisor Quinn and moves, Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Speaking to the motion, Supervisor Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a very straightforward zoning request of a 20-acre parcel in the town of Menominee from general ag to residential. The committee reviewed the request and determined that it fits within the general criteria we use. That fits the neighborhood development pattern, is not detrimental to wetlands, floodplain, or the farmland preservation plan, and is consistent with the county comprehensive plan. The town board did review the request and also approved it. So the committee is asking the county board to adopt it.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Any further speaking? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Again, Resources and Development, amending Chapter 13 Code of Ordinances, Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance, Limited Commercial District, second reading. Tom, did you want to just touch base on this?
Yeah, just very briefly, this revision of the zoning code is designed to address a concern that emerged over our commercial building code, a provision in our commercial building code. Turns out that in 2016, the committee and the staff generally did a general review of zoning provisions and ended up adopting a provision in the general commercial area that allowed for single residential housing and non-owner occupied multifamily housing. This got sort of, no one can really quite tell how that got in there, and I'm chair, so I don't know, but somehow I didn't catch it. And but anyway, this became a problem in the past year when a developer approached the local town about a local town that had set up its commercial zoning district, not thinking that it included the ability to put multifamily housing in there. So the developer approached them and said, well, I'm going to plan on putting a multifamily development in this commercial area. And the town had not planned on that being a residential area, and was able to negotiate an agreement with the developer that allowed him to put single family housing in there. And that's worked out well, I think. But this issue remains a problem, especially for towns that are concerned about controlling multifamily development and where that happens and how it happens. And so this would modify the commercial zoning provisions to allow basically to not allow non-owner multifamily housing developments. So you could have an accessory dwelling unit for the business, but you could not use that designation to do a multifamily
non-owner occupied housing development.
Thank you Supervisor Quinn. So we have the motion on the floor because this is a second reading. Is there any further speaking to the motion? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 11B, Community Resources and Tourism, Ordinance Amending Chapter 2, Broadband Task Force. First reading, I need a motion. Supervisor Zons moves. Supervisor Larry Bjork seconds. Speaking to the motion, Supervisor Zons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was to basically create a Dunn County Broadband Task Force, which is to design, as you see in the language here, to carry out the county's vision for broadband. And kind of specifically, we had a committee, another task force that kind of came up with a broadband plan. It's part of the BEAD funding grant that kind of created this, and we came up with our broadband plan. And for the task force mission will kind of be to carry out that plan, to kind of review it every 5 years, since this is going to change hopefully as more communities get broadband in the county, to evaluate broadband projects, kind of to throw the county support behind certain projects in the county, and to potentially put grants or money toward some of these projects, depending on the funding from the county board, and to co-sponsor projects as well from the county. And that would be fulfilled with members of the county board and stakeholders within the county to serve on the task force.
Thank you, Supervisor Zons. This is a first reading, so traditionally the debate happens at the second reading, but I'm sure if anyone has questions for Supervisor Zons.
And I would like to make a motion to waive the second reading, and I can, if that motion is approved, I can give the reasons why, or I can do it in advance too.
Well, let Supervisor Zons made a motion. Do I have a second for that motion? Supervisor Morehouse. Supervisor Zons.
Just the reason to kind of to accelerate it. The Wisconsin Public Service Commission has some grants that are going to be coming up in the next month or so, and it would be good to have the task force in place to be able to kind of evaluate those grants, as opposed to waiting for another month and have a little bit more time to have some time to evaluate those grants.
All right, any speaking to the motion to waive the second reading?
This will require a 2/3 vote.
And I think for 2/3, it's just simpler to do it as a roll call, just doing it electronically.
Depends on the volume and.
Well, let's try it. We'll try voice vote, and if there's a huge argument, we'll move back. So, all in favor of waiving the second reading?
Aye.
Any opposed? That seems like a pretty clear 2/3 majority. All right. So debate on the motion of the broadband task force. Any speaking to that? Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Well, Chairman Zons has really done a yeoman's work on getting this going. And the one thing in our committee that was discussed that made sense to me was that we want to be real swift in being able to make decisions at making applications. And then we want to be real deliberate on how we spend the money or who spends the money. And, just be ready to go, but then be careful and thorough on how you spend the money.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork. Any further speaking? All right, all in favor of the motion.
Chairman, if I may.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Supervisor Calabrese.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about this task force. One of the appointed people says it's someone from healthcare. does that mean someone from the county health department, or what does that mean? Someone appointed from healthcare?
Supervisor Zons, would you care to address that?
It could be actually either or. I think that the thought was that the health care industry is an important part of obviously the county, and whoever that representative could be from one of the medical facilities. It could be from the county health department. I guess whoever expresses that desire and can represent healthcare in general in the county would be welcome on the task force.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Calabrese. Thank you, Supervisor Zons. Any further speaking? Make sure to catch the people online this time. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh. Any opposed? Motion passes. We are at 11C, Facilities Ordinance Regulating Hours and Use of County Parks. First reading. I need a motion. Supervisor Vogel moves. Need a second. Supervisor Gerasimo seconds. Speaking to the motion, Supervisor Vogel.
Thank you. So we do not currently have an ordinance regulating the hours or the use of county parks, specifically like camping overnight, because the parks aren't equipped for overnight camping. So we discussed this at the facilities meeting and thought it would be a good idea to have something official so that it could be enforced if someone violates and camps overnight in the parks.
Thank you, Supervisor Vogel. Again, first reading, but I'm sure they would be happy to answer anything as we need to. Supervisor Hagan.
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the reading between camping restricted and fires. It says youth groups for educational purposes can camp overnight. That correct?
I believe there's been an annual scout camping, and so they get a permit from the facilities departments to do that. And so we wrote that exception.
And with the section 4 under fires, that means they can camp overnight, but no s'mores.
I believe they have the ability to have fires.
With that permit. Okay, all right.
Nick, did you want to add something? I saw you turn your mic on.
Just in case I was asked. But,
Okay.
Supervisor Vogel answered the question.
Great. Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I go past 22-mile fort almost on a daily basis in the summertime. And I agree 100% with the overnight camping, because I've seen like on holidays in the summertime, that a camper will come in and stake out an area that they use for like 3-4 days. But the hours at night, I totally disagree, because as a young kid, we used to go there after doing chores, and when it get dark, we'd go swimming. And as I got older and had a driver's license, a lot of times we go out there in a group and jump off the bridge. You know, so I'm not in favor of not letting it be used at night, because as far as I know, there's never no trouble that I'm not talking about the other parks, that just the one that was in my location.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork. If you're deeply concerned about it, you could propose an amendment when we have the second reading next month.
And if you want, you can get a hold of me and I can help you with wording.
Anything else? All right, this will then carry over to next month. Oh my, announcements. Next regular meeting, county board meeting, Wednesday, October 18th here at 7:00 p.m. And I should note with the appointments earlier, the two appointments that are the chairs in terms of committees, Supervisor Gerasimo to facilities and Supervisor Wilsey to admin to replace Supervisor Rogers. So that it went through then, but I just want to make sure that you're all aware. And with that, if no one has anything else, we are adjourned.